Okay, so over here I can see the main structure of my web page. Here's my header, here's the main that I didn't give a background color to it, so that means it's transparent, and I see the color of the body in the background. And then I have my footer. All right, now I want to make this web page look good on a variety of sizes of devices or monitors. So what I want to do is go ahead and I'm going to make the body smaller than the HTML. With that extra space left over, I'm going to show you how to cut that in half so that we can center the body along with the header, main, and footer inside that HTML element. So before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and give the HTML a background color. I'm going to do that back up here at the top. And I did that because I just want to kind of show you this weird thing that happens between the HTML element and the body element. They're kind of linked in a way. So you can see here, even though my body was a light gray, as soon as I add in the HTML background, it can end up tweaking that color of the body. The reason that is happening right now is that I didn't ever give my body dimension. If I went here to the body and I give it a width, I want this smaller than the HTML, so I'm not giving it 100%. I'm going to go with 80%. It can be anything smaller than 100%. And I'm going to go ahead and set its height to auto. And just so we can see it, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this body background of light gray, and I'm going to move that to the HTML. So you got to be careful with where you're adding things, and as soon as you see something happen, that's when you need to troubleshoot. Don't keep coding on top of it. Whatever you just did, that's where the problem lies, so you have to take care of that. So for us, that was just going in and moving the background color to the HTML instead of the body. Okay, now on my website, I can see I have all this extra room over here. Following normal document flow, when I made the body smaller than 80%, it took that away from the right side because remember, following normal document flow, everything begins in the top left. So I want to take this extra space and cut it in half and then put half over here on the left and half on the right. So that means I'm trying to center this large structural element, the body, inside another large structural element, the HTML. So anytime you're trying to center a large structural element inside of another large structural element, you first have to make sure that element is smaller. So the body, we had just made it smaller than the HTML. And then to the element you are trying to center, the body for us, you add in a margin set to 0 auto. So notice how this is spaced, the space in between the values and no comma. So what is going on here, and I can see I now have split everything on the sides. And what's going on is I have two values, so that means the first value goes to the top and bottom, the second value goes to the left and right. So I have said I do not want any margin on the top and bottom added. And whatever space is left over from making this smaller, I want you to cut that in half and give half to the left, half to the right. That's what auto is doing. And now that is centered, I'm actually going to go and I'm going to make my whole entire website black. But I wanted you to be able to see all of the larger structures, the header, the main, and the footer, so that you remember as you're adding content that you need to deal with space depending on if you need to add space between elements, then you can add margin, or if you need to control the space inside your elements, then you can add padding. So, but like I said, I want to make my whole web page black, so I'm going to go back over here now to my background for my HTML, and I'm going to change that to black. Okay, moving on. Next, I'm going to go ahead and style my H1. So in my header here, I need to think about how I want this styled. This is where I could align it. So if I want to center text or other content inside an element, so this is different than the centering we just did to the body, where we used the margin 0 auto once the element was smaller than its parent. Remember, we added that to the element that you were trying to center. But now I'm going to go ahead and center Tom Waits inside the header. So I'm basically trying to center the H1 inside the header. But the H1 isn't a large structural element, it's a content element. So in order to center that, I don't do it to the H1. I instead target the parent, and I use a property called text-align. And then I set that to center. Next, I'm going to go ahead and do a trick to center this in the very, very middle. Not just centered horizontally, but also vertically. When you're trying to center something vertically, and this trick I'm going to show you, it can only be done if you only have one line of text. If you have more than one line of text, you can't do this. You would actually have to use margin and padding to kind of manipulate it and get it down into the center a bit. But if you only have one line of text, you can use a property called vertical-align. And instead of center, you're going to set this to middle. But if we look over here, we notice nothing has happened yet. I need to do one more thing. Back over here, I'm going to find the height I gave to the header, and I'm going to change that to line-height. Soon as I've done that, then I have it centered vertically as well as horizontally. So what that is doing, the vertical align middle, that allows it to align middle inside of a line height. So if you only have height, it won't do it. It has to be the line height. Line height is how tall each line is of text, not your font size, but how each line. So if I added another line, that's how much height would be in between each line. So when I only have one line of text and I set the line height to 150 pixels, that also sets the height to 150 pixels. Because I don't have the height property, then it reverts back to inheriting from its parent, which means it's 100% of the height of the content. So vertical line middle, line height 150 pixels. I now have a perfectly centered H1, but it looks pretty boring. So next I'm going to go ahead and add in some Google fonts. Okay, so for your final project, you do need to use at least 2 fonts from Google. So I have a browser window open here. I'm going to go to Google Fonts. And I need to choose, like I said, at least 2 fonts. If you're doing 2 fonts, you want one for the body font. Remember, the body font needs to be very readable. It shouldn't be highly decorative, like script or anything like this spicy rice or this black and white picture. Those are too decorative. You need something that's very basic and simple and plain for the body text. For your headings, because they are much larger, then you can use a more decorative font and they can still be readable. So I'm going to actually choose my heading font first, and then I will have Google help me choose a body font from there, and I'll show you where you can do that. So I can filter through the different fonts over here on the right. Or I can just start to scroll unless I already know something that I want. I'm just gonna, to make this a little bit faster, I'm just gonna scroll a little bit. And try and choose a font that goes with Tom Waits. I think I'm going to just go with this Inconsolata. Inconsolata? I have no idea. Anyway, so this is going to be my heading fonts. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the plus sign to add it to my library. You can see the library pop up down here. And there it is there. I don't need it for now. Next, I'm going to go ahead and go into this font. So here, and if I scroll down, I can see here popular pairings. So this is Google Fonts letting me know some other fonts that look good with this one. So I can kind of skip through here. And for now, I'm trying to choose the font for my body text. So I kind of like that Nato Sans. And I can see here in my preview what the heading is going to look like, and then now the pairing for the body text down here. I think I like this Lotto. I like that bit of a contrast it has between the two. So next to Lotto, I'll go ahead and add the plus sign. Now I have two families in my library. So I open my library. In here, I'm watching this green bar. This is your load time. You don't want too many fonts added to your website, or else it'll take a long time to load the website. So before I embed this code, I need to customize that code. So when I added the fonts, it added just the regular version of those fonts. For me, I don't actually need the regular version for, well, right now I'm working on Lotto. So for Lotto, I do want the regular. I'm just going to stick just with the regular 400. But for the Inconsolata, I actually only have two choices, and I want bold. Notice now my load time turned to moderate. I don't need the regular. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and leave it because maybe I want my H1 bold, but I want my heading 2s or heading 3s or something like that. More of just a regular. I think that's good. So once you have those choices, then we can go back over here to embed. And there's two pieces of code that we need. This first one is the link to this font, actually to these fonts on Google. This goes in the head of the HTML document. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that, jump back over to brackets, and I need to add this in the HTML. Here in the head, I find my link to my CSS. I'm going to go ahead and just add that right in below. In that link, I can see I have Inconsolata, I wish I could say that, 400 and 700, as well as Lotto. And there's no number by it because it just has the 400, just the normal, the regular. So that's the first part that I need. The second part is how to give the perfect font family. So I'm going to give these to different elements, but for now I'm just going to go ahead and copy them and bring them over to my CSS. I'm going to go ahead and just paste them down here at the bottom. I eventually don't want those at the bottom, but I just want to be able to get rid of this Google Fonts for now.